Hello and welcome to An Academy. Welcome to this special session where we talk about how to approach the prelims examination. With the examination fast approaching, many of you would be wondering what should be the ideal number of questions that you should attempt, how to avoid negative marking, and how to ensure that by some means or the others you manage to cross the cutoff. Now, you have been preparing for this particular exam for a long period of time. It is important for you to get the gameplay in order on the day of the prelims. Now, with around 45 days remaining for the prelims examination, now is the time to strategize. So, in this video, what is it that we are going to take a look into? We are going to devise a kind of a strategy that in each of the subjects, how many questions they do appear for, and also how many questions from each of the subjects they can be doable, which kind of questions to solve first, which kind of questions to ignore. With the help of the 2025 prelims paper and with the help of the examples of the questions, we will try to understand the perfect approach and eventually arrive at a perfect number or a ballpark number about the number of questions to attempt. Now, without further ado, let us initiate our discussion. Now, when we talk about the prelims examination, basically you have GS paper 1 or the paper 1 and paper 2. Now, paper 1 basically is the one which consists of the GS questions, and this paper 1 will have 100 questions. 100 questions with 2 marks each, right? Now, 2 marks per question. Now, here, the cutoff for the prelims examination is roughly around 85 to, let's suppose last year it was 93. So let's assume even this year it increases. So cutoff is around 85 to 95. So you have to strategize in order to secure more than 85 or 95. Now, if you devise a perfect strategy now, accordingly you can appear for the mock tests and the test series, and do make this strategy workable and practice this in your test series so that you can efficiently work at the day of the prelims exam. If you take a look at the overall pattern of the questions which are asked in the prelims exam, out of these 100 questions, you will find a kind of an even distribution amongst the big four subjects. What do we mean by that? So basically, history and culture, geography, polity and governance, as well as economy. In all of these, roughly you will find that around 14 to 16 questions from each one of them have been asked either in 2025, 2024, or 2023. The numbers of the other questions varies. So we will assume a ballpark figure for the other questions as well. Okay. Now this is about the division of the questions per subject, and we will come back to it once again. But if you analyze the type of questions which are asked in the examination of the prelims paper, broadly, it can be classified into three types. One is the case of the conceptual, basic concept based questions. Now, concept based questions, these are the ones which, for example, talk about the fifth schedule in the case of the constitution, or let's suppose the role of the governor in polity, in economy, about the revenue deficits, the capital expenditure, in geography, about climatology or the conceptual issues associated with geomorphology, oceanography, or even Indian geography. Now, these are the concept based questions that can be solved or that can be attempted if you have revised the basic books involving Lakshmikant, NCRT, or whichever basic books or class notes that you are following, you would have covered these concepts. So these are your concept based questions. Roughly, we will talk about the distribution of these questions as well. Then you have some of them which are current affairs based concepts. Now, these can be slightly factual as well, some places in news, etc. Or let's suppose there is a new terminology that is there. So, based upon that, an information in economy concepts, or based on any particular issue in news, an architectural form has been asked in history. So, these are current affairs based concepts. For this, monthly magazines, the revision of the monthly magazines in general, or the newspapers, any of them that you are carrying out, that would be sufficient. Now, then you have few questions which are in absolute factual zones. What do I mean by that? A question associated with, let's suppose, an orangutan. Now, which of the species uses a stick in order to fish out the insects from the tree trunk? Orangutan. Which of the species, by the fluttering of the wings, gives an idea about the food and the distance to the food? Honeybees. Peacock tarantula. Right. Now, similarly, you had the question in geography about Lake Petos. Now, these are absolute factual questions. Either you know them or you don't know them. Chances are that you would not know them. If you have covered the rest of the portions carefully, few of the questions of these facts you might be knowing, but most of them you won't be aware about. So this is a kind of a complete chance luck. Okay. Now, if you take a look at the distribution of the questions, so you will find that the concept based questions are roughly around 45 to 50. Okay. Then CA based concept, current affairs based concepts, they are around 20 to 30. Okay. And the remaining around 20, they range in the factual zone, absolute facts. You know them or you don't know them. Now, before I tell you or show you the type of questions and show you the arithmetic about how you can score 100 plus without taking much risk, it gives you a simple idea about which portion to stress upon. That is concept based and the current affairs based concepts. If you stress upon this, you are addressing the majority of the answers. But the fault line starts where a candidate, when they start taking a look at the previous year questions or the test papers, they are attracted by these factual questions. Because in their minds, the candidates think that, okay, concept based, I will revise once more, I can get it correct, which is an incorrect assumption. You have got it wrong in the first go because you did not know the concepts. And that is where the candidates start chasing facts. Which facts? The name of the minor minerals, the name of the major minerals, the name of gold mines across the world, the name of all the organizations out there in the world. Now, that is something which is simply not doable. If you cover all the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries of the country, all the tiger reserves, all the Ramsar sites, of all the biosphere reserves of the country, you are anyways covering more than 800 sites. Now, how much can you retain at the time of examination? So, this is a very high risk, and very low return area. High risk and very low return. Okay. So, this is something which you should keep on absolute back burner. If push comes to shove, only then I will attempt some of these questions, not all of them. Okay. Now, here, let's take a look at the questions that you should attempt. So, when you open the paper, now at that point of time, first and most importantly, get a glance through of some of the questions. A very quick glance within a few seconds. After that, start approaching the questions associated with the concept base, the basic questions that you have studied about. We will take a look at that, but before that, for this kind of practice, and in order to understand your performance across the country, with the best minds appearing for the multiple choice questions, you can appear and you can test yourself with UCSC, which is going to be held on 11th of April 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. You can test your proficiency and you can ensure that you win lucrative prizes. And more importantly, this shall serve as a milestone of your practice. Now, when you have opened up the question paper, for example, in the subject of economy, now you get a question, a lot of questions. In economy, you get around 14 to 16 questions, right? 14 to 16 questions. Now you get questions such as capital receipts create a liability or cause a reduction in the assets of the government. Borrowing and disinvestments are capital receipts. Invested or received on loans creates a liability on the government. Now these kind of questions you would have studied in your basic economy. In economy, anyways, if you cover the portion of banking, if you cover the portion of, let's suppose, inflation, the WPI changes, the CPI changes, the GDP, the case of national income, the GDP base year changing, all those, taxation, right? Subsidies, government spending. If you cover just these basics along with current affairs, out of 14 to 16 questions, you can easily be able to solve around 12 of them. Let's assume two of them are or four of them are very factual. Still, you will be able to solve 12 out of them if you have taken care of this portion. Multiple revisions, not that I have just read it once and my job is done. So these questions should be attempted first. And you should know this because you would have taken so many test papers, you would have gone through this subject so many times. Then, one of the high yielding areas and one of the high return areas, polity. Again, every year, around 15 to 16 questions are asked from polity. Now, even if, let's suppose, you have read and revised the basic book of Lakshmikant at least twice or thrice and taken up multiple MCQs, then you will have a lot of questions. For example, what is an ordinance? What is the role of an ordinance? Then the governor, right? Governor's role. Now, these are the questions that are easily doable. And you would have practiced this in the classes as well. You would have practiced this in the Lakshmikant as well. So, out of this 15 to 16, if you have read Lakshmikant, I'm not even talking about other books like Subhash Kashyap, Didi Basu, and so on. Basic class notes or Lakshmikant, if you would have read, you could get again 12 to 13 out of the 16 correct. This is a high yielding area, that is polity. Your competition will not get polity wrong. Okay, so that is where polity is where you can improve your marks by practicing as many MCQs as possible. Why? Because this is one of the subjects where UPSC tricks the candidates by framing the sentences in a confusing manner, and very long sentences, explicit, implicit, these terminologies oftentimes can confuse you. And that is why once you practice all of these MCQs, multiple type of these sentences, you are able to understand what is the hook, and you are able to understand what is the trick that UPSC is trying to play with you. So that is very important. You will be able to solve 12 to 13 questions here easily. Then we come to the subject, that is geography. Now, geography, again, around 16 questions every year. Now, in geography, most of the candidates, they basically identify geography with questions only associated with maps. That I have to study maps. Without maps, I'm not able to study geography at all. Right? Now, in this particular case, let me show you that yes, maps have their importance. You need to read the maps, you need to know some of the locations. But what is their role? Out of the 16 questions in geography, two of them are map based. Now you pay all your attention in gaining these two questions. And chances are, if a question is asked like it was last year about Lake Petos, Lake Tanganyika, which of them lies across Tropic of Capricorn, you will get or you will commit mistakes there. There are such random places which can also be asked in the maps. So what should be the approach? Out of the 16 questions, around 10 of them are conceptual. And you can basically even look at how the toppers think about it. We had Dr. Sri Lakshmi with us, who basically talked about it and who agreed that approaching these 10 to 12 basic conceptual questions helped her score more than 100 plus in the prelims examination, ignoring the factual questions.
I would say if you are strong in concepts, do all the conceptual questions, and if you are confident like about 50-50, ideally I would suggest if you attempt only if you are sure. But if you have a more than 50% surety in it, you can go for it.
Okay, so out of 15, let's suppose the conceptual questions will be around 10. 10 of them will be conceptual. Let's suppose 3 of them will be factual, right? And 2 of them, let's suppose trivia based or map based. So out of this, can you say that 12 to 13 marks can be gained 12 to 13 questions can be attempted in
Surely, sir.
geography,
Yes, sir.
but you have to pay attention to concepts.
Yes, sir.
Right. So here, for example, if you take a look at the conceptual questions, here you have a basic question associated with continental drift theory, which was asked in 2025. Now, if you have read geomorphology, continental drift theory is one of the first topics that you would have read. Now, this is also a simple framing of the question. You should get this right. Then, this question about the case of the dust particles, subtropical areas. This is about the case of precipitation, high pressure sinking air, rising air. The basics that you study in atmospheric circulation about the pressure zones, equatorial low, subtropical high, subpolar low, where the rainfall occurs. UPSC, for that matter, let me tell you, 2023, 2024, and 2025 has repeated a question about isothermal behavior. Still, the candidates, they are okay with committing mistake in that, but end up rectifying endless amount of random facts about minerals, about the crops, about the case of, let's suppose, the maps, random lakes in Africa. It will have a limited return, let me tell you. Now, here, then similarly in environment, when a candidate thinks about environment, so basically they think about only the species like orangutan, peacock tarantula, or national park wildlife sanctuaries. I should ratify all of them. But if you observe, environment here also has got conceptual question. Direct air capture has been repeated in the prelims in the mains examination for 2 years. It has been in news, right? Circular economy is in news. And these are basic conceptual questions. So, out of the 15 questions which are asked in environment, at least you will be able to solve around 8 to 9 of them. Let's remove the factual questions. Let's suppose a random organization is asked. I was not aware about it. Fair enough. I will solve only 8 to 9. In geography, out of 16 questions, 10 are conceptual. Three are associated with current affairs based concept. And then two are associated with the case of the absolute factual maps. So here also, I should be able to solve at least 12 questions if I am reading only concepts, that is the NCRTs or the class notes. That's it. Then, other than that, history. Now, history is again a puzzling subject. History is where you have simple questions as well. For example, dancing girl found in Mohenjo-daro is which kind of a statue? So there again, you have the case of around, let's suppose, 15 questions. Now, 2025 was slightly easier for history. So that is why we will not consider 2025 as a perfect barometer. Let's assume out of 15, I am able to solve only 9 questions. Okay, rest of them I'm not able to solve. Then similarly, you have science and tech. In science and tech also, you have complete questions based on current affairs. If you have followed current affairs in science and tech, for example, the Majorana chip was asked, those kind of questions are directly from the case of current affairs, or the basic properties of virus, the basic properties of blood, antigens. These are directly asked. So there also in science and tech, the yield can be high. Now, which are the type of questions you should ignore while attempting the paper? Peacock tarantula. Consider the features of peacock tarantula. If you have not heard about this, you will never be able to get this. Okay. Or you will end up committing negative marks. Lake Tanganyika, Patos Lagoon, and Tonle Sap. Now, how many of them through which equator passes through? Right. Now, if you have not heard about, let's suppose, Lake Tonle Sap, now how will you manage to get the answer correct, even if you have read the other two? You cannot be happy that I know where Lake Tanganyika is. It is present in the African Rift Valley zone. You have to be aware about the Patos Lagoon as well, to the north of the Rio de la Plata. Right. Now, for example, which one of the following launched the Nature Solution Finance Hub for Asia and the Pacific? Absolute factual based on current affairs. You have heard it or you have not heard it. Ignore these questions. Only if it is a desperate situation should you try your hand at these. Even in your economy and polity. For example, in economy, I told you there are factual questions as well. So, business responsibility and sustainability report. Right. Now, RBI mandates all the banks. Now, if you have followed current affairs, you might be able to get this. But if you are not able to get this, don't panic. It is okay to leave these questions. Right? In history, Gandharv, the first Gandharv Mahavidyalaya, a music training school, was set up in 1901. Where? Now, very little probability that you would have come across this particular question in the normal standard textbooks. If anybody is telling you that they knew this question from before, either they are lying or they have studied such random kind of books, they won't be able to get the concepts correct. So don't get misled by these questions. Don't chase these questions either in test series or even while analyzing PYQs. Then, even in polity, you have certain such questions. For example, match the following of the state and the description. So, here you are bound to commit mistakes. So, avoid these. So, we have seen which questions to attempt and which questions to avoid. Now, let us take a look at the number of questions to attempt safely. So, in polity, you have roughly around 15 to 16 questions which are asked. Now, a candidate who has studied Lakshmikant thoroughly should be able to solve out of these at least 13 of them. Let's assume 13 should be solvable. You will commit negative marks also within this. Acceptable. But that is if you are attempting 16 questions in polity. Let's assume 3 of them you have committed negative marks, or 4 of them you have committed negative marks. Geography, out of the 16 questions, 12 based on the basic concepts and the places in news, right? 12 you will manage to get it correct. History, out of the 15, let's suppose you have managed to get 8, okay, or 9. Okay, let's assume that you have managed to get 9. Earlier we pegged the figure at 10, but let's just suppose that it was a tough paper. Out of 15, I was able to manage only 9. Rest of them were very factual. I left them. Economy, out of 16, again, a high yielding area, 12. Environment ecology, 15, right? So here again, I am able to get how much? Around, let's suppose, 8 or 9. Science and tech, current affairs based, right? And basic sciences based. If you have 10 questions, if you have read current affairs monthly magazines, revised the current affairs monthly magazines, out of 10, you should get around roughly 7 to 8 of them correct. 3 or 4 of them, let's suppose you have done the negative marks. Then IR, international relations, let's suppose there are 8 questions, 6 to 8 questions. IR, if you have covered G20, the case of the BRICS, the global summits, ASEAN is in news this year. So G7, all these international agreements, just the basic ones that you read in current affairs. You should get 6 of them correct. It is not a very tough subject to get stuck in. Okay, so like that, what you are doing, only the doable questions in each of the subject. You are not trying to overachieve in this. But how many questions have you managed to get it here? If you simply summarize this, this becomes 34, this becomes around 46, this becomes 54. You are already staring at a number 65 to 68. Okay, you are already staring at that number, roughly around 65 to 68. Overall, if you sum total it, it will come to more than 70. But let's assume I have committed lot of mistakes and negative marks as well. So I am able to solve at least around 63 of them, which are correct, minimum. So overall, for getting the 63 correct, how many should I attempt? Please get one thing very clear. Even from the concepts that you know, let's suppose 15 conceptual questions are asked in polity and you have read all the conceptual questions, you will commit mistakes in that. Don't think that 15 portions and the 15 questions I have studied, all of them will be correct. Nobody is able to achieve that. Okay, so let's suppose your efficiency rate is somewhere around 70% or 80%. So ideally, to get 63 correct, you have to give an attempt to around 85 questions. 85 questions should be attempted by you. Okay, and that would range from your comfort level, the difficulty of the paper. Sometimes history is difficult, sometimes geography is difficult, sometimes, let's suppose, you have miscellaneous environment ecology which is difficult. So your range will vary in each of these, but overall you will observe that you are maintaining a kind of a consistency and a consistent momentum. So out of at least 85 questions you have to attempt. Out of that, you will get around 60 to 65 correct, or 60 to 63 correct. And I'm giving you the scope of around 23 to 24 incorrect. So even if you get, let's suppose, 63 correct, okay, so, and 23 incorrect. What is the number that you are staring at? You are looking at a number which is around 110, 105, 110, thereabouts. So even with this, you are able to secure 100 plus. So that tells you you don't need to touch those areas, you don't need to touch those topics which will be very low return. For example, if you are spending hours learning a particular fact from where one question was asked once in 2019 or 2018, for example, minor minerals, is it worth all that effort? Ask yourself. If all those would be important, UPSC would have put the cutoff somewhere around 150 and not at 85 and 90. So stick to the basic subjects, the big four subjects: polity, geography, history, economy. Revise the basic books again and again and again, and get around 10 to 12, 12 to 13 correct in these itself. Already you are close to around 45 to 50 ballpark. And once you are in that 45 to 50 ballpark, IR, environment, science, and tech, the basic questions of them will lead you to around 65 plus minus 4 5 ballpark. So that gives you a scope to commit even 20 mistakes. So your overall attempt of 85 plus minus 5, depending upon the toughness of the paper. If the paper is easy, feel free to extend it slightly to 87, 88. But if the paper is tough, it's okay to restrict yourself. You cannot commit around 30, 40 mistakes or negatives. Okay, better not to attempt the question. So that should be your strategy. 85 questions, plus minus 2 to be attempted. Attack the basics, 60 to 63 correct, and you are able to get 100 plus. Practice this with the test series that you are appearing for. You have around 40 days, 45 days still in front of you. Take a look at each of these test papers, revise the basic subjects again, and then again emphasize on the basic skills. You will gain proficiency and you will achieve success. I hope that this has helped you out. Do let me know in the comment section if you are able to benefit from this particular strategy. Till we meet again, do take care. And if you have liked the video, please don't forget to click on the like, share, and the subscribe button. All the best for your examination. Goodbye. Thank you.